Good morning. Welcome to Ocean Hills. So glad to see you here. Would you stand with us? We're going to sing together. It's important to raise our voices with one another, to encourage each other, and proclaim who God is this morning. Go. Heaven thundered, and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you form. Faith commanded, and the mountains move. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. Let's proclaim this together. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Freedom conquered, all our chains undone. Sin defeated, Jesus has overcome. Mercy triumphed when the third day dawned. Darkness was denied when the storm was gone. Yeah. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Let's put our hands together this morning. Praise to our unstoppable God. Let's proclaim this together. Nothing shall be impossible. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Sing it out, unstoppable God. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Amen. Let's go shout praise. All right, I want to invite you into a place of wonder this morning. Let's let our eyes be open in wonder and awe for who God is. Have you ever seen the wonder in the glimmer of her side? As the eyes begin to open and the blindness meets the light. If your eyes so set, I see the world in light. I see the world in wonder. I see the world in light. Mercy, the living blood. I see the world your way.
So say, I see the world in love, I see the world in freedom, I see Jesus way, the wonder and the why. I see the world your way, I'm not afraid to follow. I see the world your way, and I'm not ashamed to say so. I see the Jesus way, and I'm walking in the light. I see the world in light, I see the world in wonder, I see the world in life, mercy the living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. Oh, I see the world in grace, I see the world in God's love, I see the world your way. Walking in the light, walking in the wonder, the wonder in the wild, the wilderness to wonder. Oh, say, I see the world in love, I see the world in freedom, I see Jesus' way.
Amen. You guys can grab a seat. Good morning, Ocean Hills. It's summertime! Oh, Ocean Hills summer is the best. Welcome, church family. We are so glad to be here to worship with you today. My name is Lila, and along with Brandon and Rob, we get to lead our youth ministry here at Ocean Hills. It is our huge pleasure to do that. And on behalf of our whole staff team, I want to welcome you guys to worship this morning. We are thrilled to be here together. It is Ocean Hills summer, which is my favorite season of church. There's so much going on, lots of backyard hangout time, beach time together. It's just a sweet time to be in our family. A couple of things I want to point you to. If you have not had a chance to start touching base with your area Bible study, I really want to encourage you to do that. And I think a lot of you are maybe in your heads thinking, well, I missed the first 3, I got another vacation coming up, I can maybe go to this one. Go to one. That's totally fine. Super organic, summertime. It's the best. That's one of the reasons we do area Bible study, is to feel that kind of organic, summertime, hang out in the backyard, talk about faith, talk about life. So please, I want to encourage you to get in touch with your area Bible study and just show up this week. Take that step, do it. So fun. Another thing, I am already dressed because next Sunday is one of my favorite Sundays of the year. It is our church on the beach. Who else likes church on the beach? I love church on the beach. Truly, true story, 12 years ago, Ryan DiGiulio and I, young, lovely couple with no children, wandered onto the beach for the first time and met the Ocean Hills family at church on the beach. So it is just a little special place in my heart. And I know a lot of you share that enthusiasm for this great summer tradition that we have. So please come join us next Sunday. Do not show up to the Marjorie Luke Theater. There is nothing sadder than a car driving in to Santa Barbara Junior High parking lot with no one here. It's so pathetic. Don't be that person. Please join us at East Beach. You can park in the parking lot or on the street if you're cheap like me, and bring a chair. If this is your first one, this is not like a formal beach gathering. There will be no chairs set out for us. Bring your own chair, bring lots of sunscreen, bring an umbrella, an open heart for Jesus and the church family, and we will see you there. So, so fun. Don't forget, next Saturday, church on the beach. All right? You with me? Cool. So, what else do I have? You got a lot of paperwork when you came in. One of the pieces of the paperwork is your sermon notes. Be ready to take down some juicy notes today, some tidbits to take home. On the other side of that is our area Bible study questions. Again, referencing the area Bible study I spoke of before. And then the
piece of paper is our bulletin. There's some great announcements on there for you to clue into what's happening in the life of our church family. And also, at the bottom is that connection card that we talk about every week, but we do it because it's so important. It's like a lifeline between our community and the staff directly. You can include prayer requests. We would love to know real data information about you because it helps us to serve you better and to connect you better. So please tear off that card, and those go in the joy boxes on the way out, along with your tithes and offerings. If you write a check or bring cash to church as an outpouring of your joy with the Lord, that's where you put your offerings. Or you can text 77977 and be put on our PushPay platform that does our electronic offerings. Okay? So much going on. Okay, last thing. It is camp season, which as the youth director just makes my heart explode. Sending students to camp is the greatest gift. I just love it. And this morning, maybe when you were walking in, you saw some junior hires with their bags that are bigger than they are, getting into our church van, and they are on their way this very moment to Ponderosa for the week up in Mount Hermon. So awesome. In 3 weeks, we are taking a group of high school students to Kidder Creek for the wilderness ascent, which I just found out I get to sleep on the ground for 6 nights. So I'm so rustic these days. Wilderness ascent happening for high school at the end of the month, and then at the first week of August, they will be missing Fiesta, our 5th and 6th graders are going to Redwood Camp up in Mount Hermon too. How many of you had a life-changing experience at a Christian camp? Anybody? Oh yeah, look, lots of hands. It is a powerful experience. God uses camps in really amazing, extraordinary, transformative ways. And thank you, church family, for blessing our kids as they go. Thank you, families, for making it a priority to send your kids and making a sacrifice. Camp ain't cheap. What the heck is that all about? In my head, it should be like $300 because that's what it was in the 90s. But no longer. It is a sacrifice for families to get them there. If you would like to contribute to our camp scholarships for youth ministry, we'll pitch for those tithes and offerings to our bookkeeper. But it's just such a gift to be able to send them. So this morning, would you join me in a prayer for all of our students going to camp, for our junior hires and our high schoolers and our 56ers? Let's pray together and ask God's blessing over them together. Would you pray with me? Lord, you are the giver of good gifts, and this morning we thank you for the gift of camp for our students in the Ocean Hills family. We thank you for those junior hires that are on the road. Would you bless them as they travel? Would they just have a safe ride up to camp? Would you fill them with enthusiasm and anticipation of what you're going to do this week? We bless them, we send them, Lord, and we ask that they would know your profound love for them. Would you show up in a powerful way in these students' lives as they set apart a week to pursue you, to pursue friendship with you. Just reveal yourself uniquely to each one, God, and transform hearts, God. Would you capture their imaginations, their hearts, their lives for you? We are just in awe of your love for us. You love these kids more than we do, which can be so hard for our little human brains to comprehend, but it is true. It is the truth of who you are, holy and loving and gracious God. In Jesus' name, amen. Oh, the crying prayer, always. So, 5th and 6th graders, I'm going to excuse you guys to go with my friend Brando. 7th graders, 8th graders, high school students, I want you guys to stay in here today because, ladies and gentlemen, we have got the one, the only, Dr. Scott Lisea here with us today. My privilege to introduce you, sir, this morning. Great friend of our church family, pillar of the community, headmaster, a proud headmaster. I mean, that is super
That's
tight,
scary.
but we welcome you. I welcome you, friend,
Thank
to our church.
Who's thankful for Lila? Man! I want Lila to preach. Lord Jesus, I'll have what she's having. Fantastic. All right, I realize that upon my arrival here on the platform that I've caused some of you to stumble already. I feel it. The Zilster family right now is just eating their liver. They're like, we're going to a different church, right? The guy has the audacity to wear a San Francisco Giants jersey. Huh? I still believe. My childhood was this season, okay? The whole time I was growing up, we were terrible. We're the worst baseball team ever, but it didn't matter. I loved them, saved up all my allowance, went to Candlestick Park, ate 4 malts, moaned my way back home. That was just the rhythm. That's what happens. And when Jamie and I decided that we would like some children, I knew then that I would disciple them in the way of Jesus, the Chicago Bears, and the San Francisco Giants. And boys, if you just stand, please. You're wearing some garb there. There we go. I just want to show you. Now, just to show you that the kingdom of God is big and it's expansive, I married a Dodger fan. Okay, so the kingdom even includes you all. But the boys, they just kind of knew. They always knew, deep inside their bones, they were going to be Giants fans. They were now, and here's where it's going to get wild. I'm so proud of them now, because when we see people in public, and right now, like in years past, if you see somebody in public in a Giants deal, you're like, Giants, whoa! Even year, you're like, we're winning. We're winning all the time. Right now, it's just like one sufferer to another, like, bro, you got the guts to wear the hat right now. I feel you, right? In it together. I still believe. And I see my boys do that, and I want to tear up like Lila. Really, when I see them do that. You know why? And this is a little bit of a cheesy metaphor, and I know that this shirt is causing some of you great joy and some deep angst. See, the Dodger baby is leaving right now. That's how much pain. Unbelievable. Really? Well, you're raising them right. I respect that. But here's the metaphor. My boys have grown up caring about the things that their father cares about. And that's the question I want us to sit in this morning. And let this jersey be just, for you Dodger fans, let it just be irksome. Let it stir you up. I kind of aim to make us uncomfortable this morning, because I've been uncomfortable for 2 weeks studying this stuff. This is uncomfortable stuff. So let the visual just kind of have its full effect in us. Let the imagery work to unsettle us as we live in this question. Like, my boys care about the baseball team that their dad cares about. They didn't grow up in the Bay Area. I did. They care. But how about us? Do we care about the things that the Father cares about? I just want us to sit in that question, to live in that question. Now, last week, John introduced this series about justice in the Scriptures. And he did a great job. And he taught us one of the Hebrew words, mishpat, for justice. And we referenced that it shows up over 200 times in the Old Testament. That gets a lot of airplay. That means it's important. That means it's a theme we had to pay attention to. And this week, I just want to continue the conversation. And I kind of joked earlier with some of the worship band. I was like, when John sent me the message saying, hey, will you preach on this? I was like, certainly he means this is a 10 sermon series. I mean, this topic is enormous. This isn't one of the side dishes of the Bible. This idea of justice and God's kingdom and what God's people do as they interact with injustice is everywhere. It's thoroughly everywhere. And so let's come be uncomfortable together. In Luke 4, Jesus shows up to the synagogue. And it's a common practice that they would pass the scroll around, and it could be your turn to read. It just happened to be Jesus' turn when they handed him this Isaiah scroll. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he's anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And then he rolled up the scroll and he gave it back to the attendant and he sat down. I love this part. It says, and the eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened to him. And he began his little sermon, his little commentary on the Isaiah passage by saying this: today, this scripture from 400 to 600 years ago about the Messiah is fulfilled in your presence. I mean, I get goosebumps now imagining what that must have felt like in a culture, in a people that was entirely built around waiting for the coming of the Messiah. This is one of the hundreds of instances where Jesus fulfills the messianic prophecies. And he says, today, in your midst, this is being fulfilled. Well, what is this idea of good news to the poor? Proclaiming freedom to prisoners, giving sight to the blind, setting oppressed people free, proclaiming the Lord's favor, the idea that God is present even with those that are on the margins. This is the stuff that God cares about. This is the stuff that Jesus grew up caring about. This is the stuff that's throughout Scripture that sets the worldview of Jesus. This is the stuff, this idea of good news, of freedom, of giving sight, of setting people free, of pouring out his favor. But what we often do in the Western church is we hear this passage and we immediately sort of file it away to spiritual. Like, well, yeah, God's sort of given me sight. Like, he helps me see things. And that's true. And God has set me free, maybe from some things. Like, good. But it's not only true of someday in heaven, someday about the forever and ever. It's also true right now. And then Jesus went about in his life and ministry doing these very things, proclaiming God's goodness. And the good news was, hey, God's not far off. He's right here in our midst. He's a father. He forgives. He calls us. All this stuff. And he actually gave sight. And here's the wild thing, is that God's people, when they start getting captivated by the love of the Father, end up doing the very same stuff. And there's lots of history of the church doing these type of things, joining in with the stuff of Jesus, because he cares about these things. Do you know that in the Scriptures, over 2,100 times poverty is mentioned? Do you think God has something to say about poverty? And poverty and injustice go hand in hand. Poverty is it's not a lack of money. Real poverty is a lack of opportunity. Have you ever seen it? It takes your breath away. I grew up pretty poor. But that wasn't poverty, because I had opportunity. I was getting an education. I had chances to do things. I've seen poverty in like Indian slums. There is no hope. There is no opportunity. There is no clear way out of that. Poverty and injustice go hand in hand, and God cares about these things. So we're going to do a little teaching. Maybe we'll get to some preaching. Here's the teaching part. John last week gave us the word mishpat. I want to give us 3 other Hebrew words that sort of help us understand this concept of justice on how God sees it. So we're going to speak Hebrew to one another. You might want to wear some rain clothing because it can get messy, but here we go. The first word is chesed. Everyone say it. Chesed. Get really close to somebody next to you and say chesed. Okay, there we go. You're welcome. Okay. This is God's unconditional grace and compassion. This is the attitude of loving kindness and mercy. It's this attitude of loving kindness and mercy. That's chesed. Now, here's mishpat. We can reduce it down to the word justice. But what it is it's the action of loving kindness and mercy. So justice is chesed in action. Okay, that's mishpat. Everyone say mishpat. Good. Makes me feel like eating a stew. I don't know why. Okay, so, Proverbs 21 says to do righteousness and justice. Mishpat is desired by the Lord more than sacrifice. Mishpat is taking care of what they call the quartet of the vulnerable. And here's the quartet. Widows, orphans, immigrants, and the poor. That is mishpat. Justice in action looks at those most vulnerable and says, let's put our loving kindness and mercy in action. Okay, so we've got chesed, we've got mishpat. Here comes another one. The T is silent, but let's say it anyways. Tzedakah. Everyone say that. Good, we're speaking Hebrew. That's righteousness, but it's not righteousness like we think of, some sort of spiritual righteousness. Maybe someone's got a glow on them. I probably do. It's just because it's warm up here. Okay, it's not that kind of righteousness. It means right relationship. Right relationship with you, with my neighbor, even with my enemy, and with the quartet of the vulnerable. With the poor, the widow, the immigrant, the orphan. So a right relationship, that is tzedakah. I love this passage out of Isaiah. He who walks in tzedakah and speaks with sincerity, he who rejects unjust gain and shakes his hands so that they hold no bribe. This idea of right relationship. And then the last one, it's not on your notes, it's bonus, just for showing up today. Ladies, get in free. The word shalom. Okay, everyone say shalom. There we go. Now we kind of reduce this to peace. But it's like the big, fat, good, comprehensive kind of peace. It's not just like, peace, bro. Okay, that's Rincon. Okay, no, this is different. This is like integrity from the inside out, that my inside and my outside match, that there's peace and continuity. And it's not just shalom in me alone in my closet, it's there's shalom in my relationships and shalom in my community. So these four words, chesed, mishpat, tzedakah, shalom, they're holistic terms. They're not just spiritual words out there for someday, somewhere in heaven. They're also meant now and forever. This is the context that Jesus is going to teach and talk and demonstrate on justice. And they're all these words are inextricably linked together. They often come side by side. Mercy and justice. Often. In fact, when you link tzedakah, righteousness, with mishpat, justice, that's basically the definition of social justice. But I was thinking about that term, because social justice is a big deal. You can Google that, it shows up everywhere. It's hot. If you're a millennial without social justice, God bless you, okay? Social justice is a big deal. My question is this. According to the scriptures, or my statement is this, there is no other kind. Justice always has horizontal direction. It means that we are working this out with one another. There's no evidence in Jesus' teaching or his life that this is just sort of spacey spirituality out there for someday. So, the scriptures talk about in the New Testament two different kinds of justice. Rectifying justice, which I was just kind of looking forward to saying that word. I feel like you can preach when you say rectifying justice. That's good. We're going to rectifying justice. It says, hey, something has gone wrong, and here's some instruction on how you get it back together. Okay? Do you remember when Zacchaeus, when Jesus called him, right? Hey, Zacchaeus, tonight I'm coming to your house. Zacchaeus almost falls out of the tree, and he says, if I've stolen from anybody, I'm going to give him back like 3 times. And everyone in the crowd's like, if? You've been screwing us for years. What are you talking about? You've been stealing it from... If. But as soon as Jesus encountered Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus encountered Jesus, Zacchaeus went about setting something right. That was his spontaneous response to the gospel. Rectifying justice. We'll get down to some more rectifying justice later. But then the other kind is primary justice. Primary justice gets most of the airtime in the scriptures. And it's the simple idea, think of this as preventative justice. That if you live this way, you won't need no rectifying justice. If you live this way with one another, you will be doing chesed and mishpat and tzedakah, and you will experience, and there will be shalom. You won't need to put things back together, because this is how I'm calling you to live in the world that I've placed you in. Okay, only a fool would try to go through 10 quick New Testament passages and not have them on the screen. So here we go. All right, Luke chapter 3. John the Baptist is in jail or whatever, and he sends his disciples to Jesus, and he says, hey, go ask him, is he the guy? Is he the one that we're supposed to be waiting for? And, oh no, I'm sorry. And basically Jesus says to his John's the disciples in Luke 7, he says, go tell them what you see. Go tell them what you see. The blind are seeing, getting sight. Prisoners are being set free. Good news is being preached to the poor. Okay? Now, back in Luke 3, this is where John the Baptist is teaching, and people are saying, wow, you're dropping some heavy revelation on us, and what should we do then? And the crowd asked, and John said, anyone who has 2 shirts should share with the one who has no shirt. And anyone who has food should do the same. Even tax collectors came to be baptized. Teacher, they asked, what should we do? He says this, don't collect any more than you're required to. Then some of the soldiers asked him, and what should we do? And he replied, don't extort money. Don't accuse people falsely. Be content with your pay. Tzedakah, right relationships, and you'll experience peace. Shalom. Matthew 5, Jesus says, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. And there's a distinction about justice. If we're talking about getting justice for ourselves, it's a whole other sermon. That's one of the series of 15, okay? On letting God fight for you. All this instruction about rectifying justice has to do with helping people who cannot get justice for themselves. And what does real justice look like? Well, it starts with loving your enemies. Has anyone ever here ever been falsely accused, been thought ill of, had somebody work for their demise, been a true enemy? Has anyone ever experienced that? You know the deep ache and pain of that. It is hellish. Henry Nouwen says one of our deepest fears and angsts is being misunderstood. And Jesus has the audacity to say, love those who are cursing you. Now what he knows, and we come to find out, is that when we do that, we get free. We get free of hatred. And I don't care if it costs you money. Do this. Love your enemies. You will live a free life. Okay, we're still cruising. Matthew 25, how about this? This is an apocalyptic parable that Jesus has about the sheep and the goats and the end times and the separating of those who love him and don't. And he's talking to them about, hey, when I was naked, you didn't clothe me. When I was poor, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me water. This is to the goats. And they said, when? When did we not get it? And the sheep are like, we did? When did we get it? And Jesus says, when you did this to the least of these, the quartet of the vulnerable, you've done it to me, the poor, the naked, the thirsty, the prisoners. Chesed and mishpat, loving kindness and mercy in action. How important is it, does Jesus say? Well, he puts it at the end of that baby, about the end times. Luke chapter 6, if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Is that offensive to anybody else besides me? It's like, come on, Jesus, seriously? You want me to lend to people and have no guarantee of them paying me back? That is not responsible. Like, why would I do that? Why would I be kind to somebody that's ungrateful? Well, the next verse, be merciful, be chesed, just as your Father is merciful. Because we follow Jesus into his action in the world. That's why. You know, this was fun until we started talking about money. All right, but Leviticus, not in the New Testament, by the way, for you scholars, it says, if your brother becomes poor and cannot maintain himself, you shall maintain him. You shall not lend him your money at interest, but give him your food for profit. The prophet Bono says this is not about charity in the end, is it? It's about justice. The good news yet to come. And I just want to repeat that. This is not about charity. It's about justice. And that's too bad because we're good at charity. We like to give, and we like to give a lot, but justice has a higher standard. This idea that I don't look at somebody who is vulnerable and first see them in judgment and say, well, you obviously got there because of your own bad decisions, your own lack of character, and maybe like the Pharisees say, certainly God must be judging you. But to join Jesus and to follow him means to see people differently and to take action with that. Uncomfortable yet? I am. Luke 8, how Jesus treats women is revolutionary. And I know that there's all sorts of women's marches and movements and going on. I just want to say this, and I want to say it again. Jesus is really good news to women. He's really good news to women. Look in the Gospels. Be a student of Jesus in the Gospels about how he speaks to women, how he includes women, how they're part of his movement, how he interacts with them. Even a woman, we never even get her name. It was the hemorrhaging woman. I don't know, when you get to heaven someday, there's the sweater, HW. It was you, we don't know. He listens to her whole story, 12 years of suffering. Look how Jesus is with women. And women in so many places, even now today, are treated so unfairly, paid less, treated as lesser, all these things. Jesus is good news to women. How about the Good Samaritan? In fact, they got a camping club named after that. Luke 9, right? This idea Jesus tells it. Man, he's the master storyteller. He's like bombastic when he's like, okay, here's the deal. So this guy, is beaten up and he's robbed and he's left for dead on the side of the road. And here comes the most religious person I can describe to you. He walks by and he says, I'm late for prayers, I gotta go, right? And then the culmination of the story is the furthest out, most outcast guy Jesus can think of, a Samaritan. I mean, I gotta believe his disciples started to say, what? Samaritan? And I don't know who that is in your world. Fill in a nationality, fill in a class of person, fill in someone that you esteem as less. That's who Jesus grabs for his story. And he says, justice looks like this. That we care. We don't walk by people that are left for dead on the road. That's the kingdom of God. Luke 9 to the Pharisees. Man, this group, and I hate to say it, I probably identify more with the Pharisees than I should. I like to talk about them until I start to do some self-reflection myself. But, they were so concerned with how they looked on the outside. Praying and tithing and going to neighborhood Bible studies and doing all the right stuff. They're good neighbors. You want to live next to a Pharisee probably, right? But they were so focused on the appearance and so missing it at the heart level. And Jesus says, you guys want to get clean? Here's how you do this. Now these guys were studiers of studies. I mean, they were consummate students. So they're probably busting out their pencils to take a note right now. Okay, the rabbi is going to teach us about how to get clean. Let's see how it compares to the rest of what we've heard. He says, feed the poor. I'm sorry, what? You want to get clean? Feed the poor. That's not very religious. In Luke 12, it says, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. And being rich toward God is caring for the vulnerable. The purest form of giving. John talked a little bit at the end of his message last week about giving. Giving is just a natural reaction to when you encounter Jesus. It's like, I'm realizing how much he has given me. I want in on that action. And you start, as you get closer to Jesus, you will start to see generosity grow in your life. And it's like a muscle. The more you flex it, the bigger it gets. And you just will grow into this life of generosity. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But real generosity, it's interesting when you look at the stats, that most of us give to things that benefit us in some way. And this is where I think we have to do a gut check and say, am I just giving to my church that blesses me, or my school, or my alma mater, or my hospital, or those are all really good things, and please keep giving to those. We should. But I think the purest form of giving is when we give to something that we will never experience the benefit of it. It is an orphan in Africa. It is a kid that is not one of our kids that needs to learn how to read. It is somebody getting treatment for a disease, and they'll never meet me to thank me. That's the purest form of giving. It is mercy and loving kindness and justice come down. I like this one. We'll park here for a second. Luke 14. Jesus says to the host at the party that he was at, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not just invite your friends, your brothers or your sisters, your relatives or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you'll be even. But when you throw a party, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Now here's what I want to say about this. This is not a metaphor. This is not a parable. He just got done telling a parable right before this. But here he's just looking at his host straight in the eye and he says, you throw parties all the time. Let me give you some party advice. And by the way, I think God's people should lead the world in partying. We've got more to celebrate than anybody. Okay? Got to get an amen. Yeah. I know I'm at the right church because I've been in some of the parties with y'all. So, he says, when you throw a party, think about your invite list. Go out and find the lame, the crippled, the blind. You will be blessed. Now, he's not here today, but in our congregation, in our family here is DJ Chris. DJ Chris has cerebral palsy, and so he gets around in a chair. That's about the only thing that slows him down. And the rest of us just work to try to keep up with that guy, right? We do pretty good with Chris. I know that in this family, there are people that meet Chris out in town and all this stuff. That guy, in my book, should never eat alone. We got a full body of people here. And Jesus is telling us, when you throw a party, when you throw a dinner, make sure that these friends are invited. Years ago, after a trip to India, God spoke in a very powerful, clear way to me. And we came home and we started this Young Life Capernaum Club that still meets in our garage. It has changed our lives. It's just changed our lives. And here's where I would disagree with Jesus, where he says, at the end you'll be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. I feel like I've been repaid 100 times over in the moment. I feel like every time I'm out with Chris for lunch or we have him over, I'm repaid right then. My heart gets softer. I'm less of a jerk. I'm more patient. I have better perspective on whatever crud I was worried about beforehand. I'm more gentle when I'm with these friends. Right, Greg? And this has changed our life. And so our boys have grown up in a house where these friends are around a lot. And then we started saying, well, we read this passage, we realized it wasn't a parable, and we said, okay, when we throw parties, let's try to remember the invite list. And so we've had some raucous Thanksgivings. One Thanksgiving, our whole family, toward the end of the night, was like huddled by the fireplace, like hiding, because the rest was just chaos. So I was like, okay, so we got to fine-tune this thing. But really, I think it's reverse ministry. But again, I want to call us that this is just what justice looks like in action. It's because it's loving kindness and it's mercy in action. And I dare you to just take Jesus at his word just on this one. And if you need some friends that don't walk or see or get around very well or think very well, give me a call. We'll hook you up. The thing we found in starting this club is that a lot of these kids had never been to anyone else's house. They'd been to their house, maybe their grandparents' house, but they weren't ever invited to somebody's birthday party. They weren't ever just casually over at somebody's house hanging out playing Xbox or whatever else. And so it was a radical thing just that we invited them to come and be in our home. That's like a kingdom of God thing. It's a hospitality thing to the quartet of the vulnerable. One week, one of our leaders, Adrian, her last name was Musachia, so we just called her Moose. Not a kind nickname for a beautiful young girl, but anyways, Moose was picking up a girl who she picked up every week, and this girl, her parents spoke broken English, but they would run out with flowers and deliver their daughter to the car. And one time the dad was tearful and said in broken English, "Why do you do this?" And Moose, a young college student at the time, in a moment of absolute gospel clarity, says, "Because Jesus does." And that's it. Loving kindness, mercy, justice, peace. Jesus does that stuff. And followers of Jesus join him in doing that stuff. We care about the things that the Father cares about, and then we figure out and stumble around together and say, how do I join him in this stuff? And by the way, when we started that club, we didn't know what we were doing. Seriously, I would come out in these little characters at the club and try to have fun, dressed up as a pirate or whatever, and there'd be some girl with Down syndrome just rocking in the corner weeping, and I'm like, okay, so maybe I overdid it, you know? But, so let me ask you this question. What are these numbers, what's the significance of these numbers? 3 and 261. It's not the Giants' current record, but it's close, okay? We're only 25 and a half games out this morning, okay? 3, the number of times that the name Christian is named in the New Testament. 261, the number of times that the word disciple is mentioned in the New Testament. And I just give us this question and say, can you be a Christian and not be a disciple? Can you be a Christian, whatever that means, and not be about following Jesus and joining Jesus? And I would say that that's a conundrum. That's a categorical conundrum. It's like asking me, can I be a circle without being a shape? I don't know what we're talking about. That doesn't make any sense. The writers of the New Testament, Jesus, if we were to ask them that question, can I be a Christian and not a disciple? I think we'd get some blank stares back at us and say, no. This call to Jesus is a call to follow him. Come follow me, he says. Come do the stuff I'm doing. All by my grace, all by my power. But you want in on some real life? Do this stuff with me. We're starting a new Bible curriculum in 8th grade at our school, and I'm really excited for it next year, where we're just going to look at the book of Acts with our 8th graders. Because I want them to catch excitement and fire over, look what happens when God's people kind of get the gospel. And what you see in the book of Acts is people are sharing stuff. Widows and orphans are getting taken care of. You see the gospel fleshed out and moved out. And it's awesome. Okay, a word on rectifying justice out of the New Testament. How about this baby? Jesus says this, again, not a metaphor. If you're on your way to church and you realize that someone is sideways with you, turn your Prius around, go to their house, and get right with them, then come to church and give your offering in the joy box. Is that what we're calling it now? Does confetti come out? Because that would be awesome. Joy box. Poof, trumpets, right? I mean, how high does God think of worship in the scriptures? It's a pretty big deal. Have you read the Psalms, right? It's a big deal, okay? But Jesus says this, if you're on your way to worship and you're sideways with somebody, stop. Rectify that. Get right, brothers and sisters. My experience of getting right comes mostly in marriage and in then friendships and work. But it means that both of you got to die a little bit for a higher calling. And the higher calling is to be one, to be reconciled with each other. That's a Jesus thing. Okay, I'm going to end on this. When God's people get about the business of making it right, wherever it isn't, they show mercy. But it's not only mercy. It's justice. It's action. Think about these major movements in the world history where God's people saw something that wasn't right and said, as God's agent, I'm going to go about making this right. The abolitionists, led by followers of Jesus. Prison reform, led by followers of Jesus. Care for orphans, widows, refugees, led by followers of Jesus. Hospitals, that's a good idea, Jesus people. Women's suffrage, getting women to vote, Jesus people. Apartheid, Jesus people. Civil rights, Jesus people. Persecution around the world, people who follow Jesus. Human trafficking, people who follow Jesus. Understand that all of us are made in the image of God and say, not for sale. Fair trade, Jesus people. Clean water, Jesus people. So sometimes it's not just mercy, it's taking on the systems of injustice and saying, God's people are involved in making wrong things right. So here's my challenge to us. When Jesus says, the Spirit of the Lord is on me because he's anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, let's link that together in our own hearts with John 20 when Jesus says, as the Father sends me. That little two-letter word in English, as, the Greek word kathos, means just like the Father sent me, so I send you. I challenge us this week, go Google the top 25 Bible verses on justice. And just sit in those one morning and ask the Lord, Lord, do I care about the things that you care about? Bono, again, second time he's quoted, says, stop asking God to bless what you're doing. Get involved in what God is doing, because it's already blessed. Let's get involved in what God is doing. God is always with the poor, so that's what God is doing. That's what he's calling us to do. So maybe we should stop asking for so much blessing and start asking, God, make me a blessing. And again, here's the wild thing about the kingdom, reverse ministry, you'll be blessed. Way more than anybody that you bless. Let's end with this quote by Bob Pierce. He was the founder of World Vision. And he had this simple prayer. Let my heart be broken by the things that break the heart of God. You know, we don't have it within us to get all wonked up about caring about other people and caring about the poor and the orphans. They're not right in my front yard. We don't have that in our own. But I find it so helpful to ask God, God, give me your heart. I don't have it on my own. I'm pretty self-absorbed. I never have to worry about if anyone is thinking about me, because I always know, right? So try this prayer on for size. Let my heart be broken by the things that break the heart of God. The last thing I want to do as the worship band comes up is just read together this confession. This is found in the book of prayer. I find I don't get through these words without it hitting my heart every time. And so let's read this aloud together, and maybe we can stand while we do so. Let's read. Most merciful God, we confess that we have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed, by what we have done and what we have left undone. We have not loved you with our whole heart. We have not loved our neighbors as ourselves. We are truly sorry, and we humbly repent. For the sake of your Son, Jesus Christ, have mercy on us and forgive us, that we may delight in your will, walk in your ways, to the glory of your name. Amen.
We're going to bring the lights down and give you guys some space, some time to respond. We're going to sing a few songs. I want to invite you to use this time. You can sit, you can stand, you can come up here and kneel. This is a time to pray, to listen to what the Lord might be wanting to say, to remember who Jesus is, what he's done, what he's calling us to, and to allow our hearts to be softened to what we heard this morning.
Grace, what have you done? Murdered for me on that cross, accused in absence of wrong, my sin washed away in your blood. So much to make sense of it all. I know that your love breaks my fall. The scandal of grace, you died in my place, so my soul will live, oh, to be alive. I give all I have just to know Jesus, there's no one beside. Forever the hope in my heart.
Spirit of God speaking to us. And I believe if we have ears to hear, heart to hear, we can hear him speak. It says, the Spirit, not content to flit around on the surface, dives into the depths of God and brings out what God planned all along. Whoever knows what you're thinking and planning except yourself, the same with God, except that he not only knows what he's thinking, but he lets us in on it. Through his word, through what we heard this morning. It says spirit can be known only by spirit, God's spirit, and our spirits in open communion. So I just want to invite us into a space of listening, a space of saying, Lord, here I am. Spirit, speak to me. Change my heart, break my heart where it needs to be broken. Tear down my walls where they need to be torn down. Let's take some time to listen this morning. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we only want to hear your voice. We're hanging on every word. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we want to know you more and more. We're hanging on every word. 'Cause when you speak and when you move, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we see and what we see. And when you come into the room, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we see and what we see. Oh, you're changing everything. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we're leaning into who you are. Everything else can wait. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, come now and breathe upon our hearts. Come now and have your way. 'Cause when you speak and when you move,
sing for all that you've done for me.
So who brings our chaos?
Who brings our chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son and daughter? The King of glory, the King of all peace.
He rules the nations. Sing it out.
Who rules the nations with truth and justice? Shine like the sun in all of its brilliance. The King of glory, the King of all peace.
Sing it out.
This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You laid down your life. That I would be set free. Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me.
Sing that chorus just one more time. Here we go. This is amazing grace. Let's hear all your voices. And proclaim it.
This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. And you laid down your life. That I would be set free. Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me.
And would you join me in prayer this morning as we get ready to leave? God, we are so thankful for this amazing grace. All that you have done for us. God, thank you for showering us with your grace this morning. Thank you for speaking, for showing up here, for speaking to our hearts. Thank you for the word this morning, God, that your grace covers us even when we don't get justice. God, you have given us grace to do it, to go out and be people of justice. So we thank you. God, thank you this morning. Give us one thought, one word of action, God, as we leave. What can we do to be people of justice? God, would you cement that in our hearts, that that's what we're to be about? So thank you for this time. Thank you for bringing us here to this place. In your name, Jesus. And everybody said, Amen.
There's two ways to preach the list of things that God's people have done. And the first one was to unsettle us and call us to action. And the way we need to end this morning is just in pure celebration. People were in slavery and Jesus' people said no. Isn't that fantastic? People are being trafficked right now and Jesus' followers are putting themselves at risk to say no. And people are being set free. People don't have to hike miles and miles and be at risk anymore for clean water because Jesus' kids are saying, I'm in on what he's doing. Orphans are being adopted. Foster kids are being loved. Isn't this fantastic? Way to go. God's people are on the move. So when we say at the end of a sermon that God is good all the time, that's what we proclaim. I don't know if I said that right, but that's what I meant. Right? It's like that's why we do that. We go out and do stuff because we're just proclaiming God is good. And that's what I meant.
All right, have a great week. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, band. Let's just appreciate the band this morning as you take off for leading us into God's presence. Next week, 10 a.m. at East Beach. Don't show up here. Meet us at the beach. Love to see you guys then.